Alright, let's just work some problems. Let's graph this. Notice, guys, that right there tells me that this is going to open down. However it looks, I know it's going to open down. It's going to look like a frowny face, you know, something like that. Alright, let's find the axis of symmetry. X equals negative b over 2a, which means x equals negative 2 over 2 times negative 1, which is 2 over negative 2, which equals negative 1. So x equals negative 1. Alright, substitution and simplifying. Now, that is vertex is next. Vertex is a point, and you find it by taking the x, substituting it in there, so your axis of symmetry, and now we need to figure out the y. It's not the y-intercept, it's just simply the y coordinate for this point. So I'm going to take negative 1 and substitute it in for x everywhere I have an x. And so, remember, f of x and y mean the same thing. So this is negative 1 plus 2 plus 3. So that's negative 1 plus 5, which is 4. Okay, negative 1 plus 5 is 4. So my vertex is negative 1 comma 4. Alright? So let's sketch a little quick graph of that real quick. Negative 1, positive 4 is this point right here. The axis of symmetry is that line right there. Let's keep going. Let's find the x-intercepts. Not the y, but the x-intercepts. That's when you put 0 in for y. Alright, now you either look to factor or quadratic formula or complete the square. And let's see, I think I'm going to try to factor. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but let's just see. First thing I do is factor out a negative 1 because I want to make that positive. Then in order to get rid of that, I just divide by both sides by it. So I got x squared plus 2x minus 3. And let's see if this factors. I could have, of course, multiplied everything by negative 1 up there. Okay, so that times that is negative 3, and that plus that, yep. And so then I take each one of those and set it equal to 0. Add 1 to both sides. Subtract 3 from both sides. And so there's your two intercepts. As a point, though, that's 1 comma 0. That's negative 3 comma 0. So 1 comma 0 right here. Negative 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 3 comma 0. Now, for the heck of it, let's get the y-intercept. You put 0 in for x, and you'll find out that the y-intercept is 0, 3. Basically, in this equation right here, you put 0 everywhere there's an x, and you just get 3. So 1, 2, 3. So now look, here's our x-intercept, negative 3 comma 0, 1 comma 0, and our y-intercept, 0 comma 3. Here's our vertex. And so now we get some kind of good looking idea of what that looks like. And of course you can put a point like right there to match your y-intercept if you would like to. If I went too fast, you need to go back and check each one of those things that I talk about. Ask questions where you don't understand. Alright, moving on. Starting with simplifying the I. On this page, all you need to understand is that I squared equals negative 1. That's what's going to show up over and over and over again, is I squared equals negative 1. You don't have to know the whole chart, but I squared equals negative 1. You also need to be able to recognize multiplication when you see it, recognize addition and subtraction when you see it. You have to know how to do these things. And so it's very important that you can actually recognize. So stop, pause, look, what is the problem asking me to do, and then do that particular operation on that particular stage of the problem. And this one here, I need to get rid of these parentheses first, because all this is addition and subtraction. Then I got this multiplication right here, really is -1 times all those. And that simply means -3 plus 6i plus 5 plus 3i minus 8i. See, if I multiply everything by -1, it just means in here those two change signs. That's all that means. Combining like terms, and you want to always put it in a plus bi form. So a plus bi form is the form I'm looking for. So my whole number, -3 plus 5 is 2. See, -3 and 5 make 2. 6i and 3i make 9i, right? 9i minus 8i is 1i. So I don't have to write the 1. I just write I. I know that means 1i. Go back through and listen to the explanation if you didn't get that. Now, looking at this particular problem, the way this is written, there's no sign between those two. That means multiply, or in other words, the distributive property. So when I multiply that, I get -8i, that's 4i times -2, and 4i times -8i is -32i squared. Don't forget that when you have I and I, you get I squared. Keeping in mind that I squared equals -1, so that actually makes this positive 32 minus 8i. Negative times a negative is a positive, and I just move that to the back. Now let's look at these problems here. Notice the difference. Guys, you must look at these problems and be able to read. Same parentheses, but this is different in each one of them. You've got to pause and look. Alright? So in this one, I'm just simply adding things. And so -2 and 4 is 2. -1i and I cancel each other out. So my answer here is actually just 2. Not 0i, just 2. Now, whenever you have a minus, you want to go ahead and take everything out of the parentheses first. And so that's important because you don't want to make a mistake. If there's nothing in front of the parenthesis, it stays the same. Everything just comes out. -2 minus I. But if there's a minus in front of the parenthesis, everything changes signs on the inside. So this 4 is negative or minus now, and this I is negative or minus now. -2 minus 4 equals -6. -1i minus 1i is -2i. -1 minus 1 is -2. And so a plus bi form, there you go. Now, this one has nothing in between. It's two parentheses right next to one another. So here, I am actually going to multiply this -2 times both of those, this I times both of those, otherwise known as the FOIL, or two distributive properties. So -2 times 4 is -8. -2 times I is -2i. -I times 4 is -4i, and -I times I is -I squared. So I multiplied everything out. Now, let's simplify. -8 minus 6i, those two right there became -6i, plus 1. So you say, where'd the plus 1 come from? Well, this is -I squared. What's I squared? -1. What's a negative? -1. That's a positive 1 right there. So those two can go together. So I end up with -7 minus 6i because I wanted an a plus bi form. Now that's me showing you how to simplify or do operations with the I. Alright, let's go through this real quick. These are things I've already given you guys in your notes previously. The key here to simplifying items that look like this is to be able to write your exponents in a different way. And the way that I want to write it is in terms of something to the 4th power. And so what you have to ask yourself is 23 a multiple of 4? Or in other words, can I divide 4 evenly into 23? And the answer to that question is no, I cannot. And so what I have to do is say, well, what about 22? Can I divide 22 by 4? No. What about 21? I'm going down from 23. I'm looking for the first number from 23 that I can actually divide by 4. And when you look for that, you will actually find that the first number is 20. Now, notice how I wrote this. I wrote this in terms of I to the 20 times I cubed. Why? Because those two together add to be 23. Remember, if they got the same base, you multiply by adding the exponents, and I'm getting so this actually equals 1. So, in other words, I have 1 times I cubed, which simply equals negative I, because I cubed is negative I. I'm using my I chart here. All right. So that's what you do. You just simply look for the biggest multiple of 4 that you can find and rewrite it. So, does 4 go into 42? If you don't know, you get your calculator. The answer is no. And so you keep looking for, so you say 41. Then you say 40. I to the 40th times I squared. Now, how do I know 40 is divisible by 2? Because I know. I mean, it's divisible by 4. I know my multiplication tables. You have to know that. And so 40 plus 2 equals 42. So I know this equals over here. That's 1. So this really equals negative 1. Why? Because I squared equals negative 1. So whatever's left over is your answer. 51, is that divisible by 4? No. Is 50 divisible by 4? I don't think so. Then we got 49 and 48. I to the 48th. Yes, that's divisible by 4. And 3. How do I know a 3 go there? Because whatever I put over here, both of these have to add up to be this one over here. So it's just addition and subtraction using an old exponent property that we should know. That equals 1. And again, I cubed is negative I. Or, I didn't say this earlier, it's in other notes. It's actually either one of those. But most of the time they want it in terms of an I. So they'll keep it like that. The last thing I want to do is the quadratic formula, where we need to simplify an imaginary number. Alright, so before I would tell you guys to just go ahead and skip these problems once you got a negative underneath the radical. Now we're going to go ahead and work them. Alright, so here's how it works. X substitution, remember A equals 8, B equals 6, and C equals 5. Alright, X equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Alright, so hopefully you understand that substitution. Go back through and look at what I did if you don't. So that's negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 minus whatever, let's see, 2160? Yeah, 60. So that'll be, no, that's not 60. I was right the first time, 160. Brain fart. All over 16. So this actually simplifies to x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 124 over 16. And again, once we got here, we said stop. We know we don't have to graph that, but we need to know how to simplify this further. All right? And so the way this works is you would want to go ahead and separate. I'm going to just take this off to the side. And I'm going to deal with this. The square root of negative 124 is equal to negative 1 times 124. And you separate those like this. And that equals I. Again, from the I chart. This part equals I. So I'm going to rewrite this over here as x equals negative 6 plus or minus I square root of 124. See how that became positive? And now I have an I in front. It's very important that you understand that part. Alright, running out of time, guys. After I wrote that I here, I put this part in my calculator and it gives me 2 radical 31. So I put the 2 in front of the I and radical 31 here. This right here is the same thing as negative 124 in simplified form. That's the part you need to know. Take a look at this and you'll see the simplification. If you don't, then we can talk about it in class. I'm running out of time. Gotta go.